Hey, Brandon here. This is channeled advice on the week ahead, and this is for Monday, November 11th through Sunday, November 17th. I've got channel messages that came through ahead of time for you guys, and I'll also be working with my spirit guides, the angels and source, to channel through, bring through any additional information that would be for your highest good regarding this, regarding anything else, while I'm reading through these channel messages for you. And I'll be working with my intuition on all that as well. So let's start here. Before we begin with what came through ahead of time, they're showing me an alligator and a crocodile. They're fighting. There's a Canadian flag. There's a moon and the moon tarot card. There's wolves. There's a lot showing up. And there are a lot of things showing up I recognize from some of the past channel messages on the week ahead. So let me see what is going on with all this showing up here. So this is really a time to really sit and get to clarity on what you can this week and potentially beyond for the next couple weeks and maybe even for the rest of the month or through the next 30 days. It's like clarity is just one of the most important frequencies right now is what I'm getting. And if you have clarity, you're going to be winning. And I'm going to tell you something. What I'm getting is that not a lot of people do have a ton of clarity right now out in the world. And you could just tell based on the actions they're taking, the things they're saying, where they're just kind of fighting each other without really fact checking anything or looking into what's true. They're just kind of emotionally throwing things around and thinking they're right, which is really interesting. Those are some interesting points of view, you could say. So, make sure you yourself are getting to clarity however you can, however works for you. If you have an important decision or choice to make and you're feeling really up in the air, like can you ground? Can you take a bath? Can you give yourself a day? Can you book a reading with a tarot reader you like or something like that? Something that will help you get clarity. And it doesn't have to be with me, just someone that you know will work well for you and get you the information you need, whatever that is. So there is also a message about confusion leaving as you do what you need to do to take care of you and kind of unplug from the outside world where you need to so that you can have that frequency of clarity wash in more easily. It might not be a good time to drown yourself in collective energies, whether that's through the news, whether that's even on TikTok or on Instagram or anywhere else. It's important you are feeding yourself information that's nutritional and helpful for you and brings you to clarity rather than content or things that are just everyone else's messed up stuff being thrown around. Okay. So, anything else on that before we move on here? I'd really trust your instincts this week and your intuition, of course. It's just really important you're operating based on that as much as you can, as much as you have that, honed in for yourself around this time period. If you're newer to all this, don't freak out about it. Just do your best and you'll be okay. So, especially for most of you, I wouldn't freak out right now. So, let's start with these messages here. And you know what? Try not to get too embroiled in other people's fight energy or if people start coming at you online. Like, you don't have to get into the comments and get crappy with people. You can, that's not the word they use. They use the S word for that one. Just keep that in mind. Like, you don't have to engage at all. And you have every right to set the boundary and just be like, nope, I don't feel like dealing with that energy today. I'm not going to respond to that. There's not really anything helpful that probably will come about getting into that fight with them. So you can take the high road regarding those of you who do anything online, and your life will probably be better. So, number one, the thing they got to ahead of time here, well, what's up with wolf, spirit animal? They're redirecting me to wolf, and some of them, moon, we kind of talked to. So, what's up with this here? Just in general, this is a great week to just put one foot in front of the other. This isn't a great week to maybe even project 20 years in the future for most of you and go like, oh, what's going to happen with all this? Or what's going to happen with the stock market in 30 years? And what's going to happen with this person doing this thing and this person in office? It's kind of like, hey, what's today throwing at you? Like, are you sitting with yourself today and getting clarity on your next steps now? And I'm hearing this message like, trust that the future is taken care of. If you're doing what you need to do today and you're working with your intuition today, the future is taken care of. Just do the best you can do, okay? Because worrying about the future isn't really going to solve anything. It's just kind of taking your power away from where it is right now, which is what can you do today? What can you do that's going to set you up for tomorrow? And even for the best future possible for you? Well, what's the best way to say it? or the best now you can have, or at least set you up for a better future. Consider those things and consider being in the moment with your power, with the choices you can make today to have your best life, okay? And weirdly enough, what I am hearing is that's potentially going to shift the collective or help with that if your world is good. And I know that came through last week. We're going to talk a little bit more about it this week too, because it's in the air and apparently it's important. So let's start here. Anything else before we move on here? So with the flag that they showed me, there is a lot of energy of changing relationships. And that's even on the world stage with the way power dynamics are working and power struggles are working. There's just a lot of energy shift around power right now and who has control and like what's going on here. And again, your job is just to make sure your world is good. And if power struggle shows up more in your personal world, how can you stay in your power in an optimal way for everyone? And that includes like setting your boundaries and having them firm. That includes not giving your power away in your choices to friends or other people right now too much. That just includes kind of even allowing your relationships to shift if they will at this time period, along with the dance that the collective is doing relationship wise and regarding power. Because, you will be more in your power if you're allowing things to shift that would like to shift and keep showing you they'd like to shift and keep leaving you clues like, hey, this is going to shift, this needs to shift. It's just going to allow you to open up to receive more and a better future, is something I'm hearing, interestingly enough. So please be an allowance of the relationship dynamic shifting in the world, in your personal world, etc. And trust me, it will get better if you're just allowing the shift instead of fighting everything, okay? So I realized that was like a lot that we went through before even getting to what's coming through, what came through ahead of time. That's okay. I don't mind flowing with these messages, however's for the highest good and however they show up. So we're going to start with number one now. So this one's a little bit more fun potentially. Make a wish. And this is actually, I didn't realize this until I sat down to film this. It's going to be 11/11 on the day this video is posted. So it is a potent day to manifest. There's a lot of collective intent on this day for manifestation. So you can piggyback off of that to empower your manifestations further. You can kind of go along with that. If I were being completely honest, in my experience and what I have experienced and seen and what I know, and maybe even a little bit what I think, you can manifest fully potently any day because you're unlimited, you're infinite, yada, yada. And what I kind of mentioned earlier, that's some of what my spirit guides have said and different channel messages is like, yeah, the universe didn't like create dates that we use on Earth, people did. And sure, you could say, well, the universe is those people and the people made this. Yeah, I get that. But at the same time, it was not like the cosmos was created and they were like, oh, and this specific way time is measured, which is by Earth rotations and things. Like there's a whole universe of all these planets, all these, like, would the universe base everything based on Earth time? Uh, yes, in a sense, if you just think of Earth time as a way of measuring a certain passage of time, but no overall. Like it doesn't make sense. So, what significance do dates and their numbers really have? It's kind of human invented if you really think about it. However, that doesn't mean there isn't collective intent on a day like 11/11 to increase manifestations or for there to be more magic or things like that. And the portals thing, I'm going to be completely honest with you. What I'm getting is it's all kind of made up. It's just another collective intention thing again. Some of you might be mad or fighting me on that, but like again, think of what I just said. Did the universe make up the dates or did people make up the dates? Like it doesn't make a ton of sense that the whole universe is like, oh yes, 11/11, there will be a portal on this day of all this thing. It's like that seems a bit more human invented. It doesn't mean you can't manifest it or work with it. It just like think about it for a second, okay? Channel on it for yourself for a second. See what your spirit guides say if you're in the place to do that. Anyways, though, make a wish. This is a potent time to manifest, regardless of everything I just said. And it's kind of an important time even to piggyback off of the collective intent for some of that boosted manifestation is what I'm getting. Like now's a great time to manifest world peace, manifest more peace for you, manifest more of what you desire. It's never a bad time to manifest. It's just an important one right now for you, is what I'm hearing, interestingly enough. So How can you use that to your advantage and almost use the way the collective is moving to your advantage and play with that and have fun with it? It's just important you are using your powers of manifestation to wish for what you'd like to have, wish even for the world you'd like to have potentially as well. Please do that one intuitively, by the way. There's a difference between like getting intuitively what would be best for the world or what does source say would be best for the world and like just deciding based on ego what would be best for the world. For example, if it's for the highest good to get into this, someone who identifies as Christian might have a very different idea based on their egoic beliefs of what would be best for the world compared to what Source itself would say would be best to the world and move things in the lightest direction. So that's kind of what I mean when I say that. It's like, what does God say would be best for the world? And it might be completely different than you expect, though probably way better in certain different ways. So wish for what you'd like to have. If it's for the highest good and it feels resonant for you, wish for what you'd like to see as the world and your world going forward. And trust that as you have more of what you'd like to have, more of the life you'd like to have, especially in an aligned way and in a way that's for the highest good, it really does open things up in a beautiful way for other people. So, again, I've spoken on this before, is if you have really great spiritual gifts and abilities, and that's something you'd really like to hone in and have, what possibilities and things are you opening up for people? What example are you setting for people when you open up that energy for yourself for the highest good and you stand as a bastion of that? Other people see that, like, whoa, look at what they can do, and look at the impact they're having, and look at that and the shift they've had in themselves and in their life. I would really like something similar. Like, what will it take for me to move towards that as well? Like, it has a knock on effect. Or even with abundance or money, if you become someone who has a lot of abundance, people are like, oh, wow, that's really cool. And they're actually a really kind person, even though they're really abundant. Okay. So you don't have to be a mean, nasty old person to have money and own a house or, whatever. Comes to mind with all that. It kind of can shatter people's projections. It can shatter people's realities that hold them back and keep them from their best lives. So again, has a really beautiful effect. And you're part of the world. I know my spirit guides have said this. Other people have said this. So if you're happier, the world's happier. If you have more abundance, potentially the world has more abundance or the opportunity for more abundance. If you get lighter, the world gets lighter. So keep that in mind and, try to see how it would be true energetically if it doesn't really make sense to your brain right now and go from there. Just so you know, it might not make logical sense in all ways, but if you sit with it energetically and intuitively, it really will. Because in a sense, you are the universe and you are everything. So as long as you're doing it in a way that's for the highest good, is you're making things better for you, you're also potentially making it better for the world, especially if other people will receive it. Okay. Next message here. Just make sure you're making a wish and good luck with all that. Number 2, they said, take care of your personal world before worrying about the outside world. This came through last week. This really came through for this month as well. And maybe it didn't come through last week. It just came through for November in general. Either way, it's really, really kind of key right now if you'd like the world to be better, for your world to be better. And it's not in a way where you're stepping on faces to force your world to be better and being narcissistic because you think that's going to be the way. It's more like working with your intuition in the universe to make your world better in a way that's aligned and for the highest good of all, okay? So I'm just going to read what came through. If you're not in a good place before you try to take care of the outside world, you're just going to drown everyone else. Stop trying to save everyone and save yourself first. If you're already in a good place, for some of you, or hopefully a lot of you listening to this while we're going through this, up your self care even more, anyways. It could just be a little bit. It could be you check within your intuition. You're like, oh, I guess I could exercise a little bit more this week, or, every week or something like that. And from there, see what you're called to do for the outside world. So up your self care, see what you're called to do for the outside world. This is not a time to drown for everyone else. So, piggybacking off of the last message just a little bit, if you're drowning to try to save everyone else, what is that doing for the world? Like, for example, if you becoming lighter makes the world lighter, if you becoming happier brings more happiness to the world, what does you drowning for everyone else do? Even if you think you're doing a good thing because you've kind of projected or decided, oh, it's good to sacrifice myself for everyone else. What are you actually creating? Well, you're creating a deficit for you, at least, in your life and energetically, and it's not necessarily serving you. There's a quote they'd like me to tell you. I believe this one's from Lee Harris. It was something along the lines of, if what you're doing to serve others isn't also serving you, it's probably not serving others as much as you think it is. So, if you're doing all this stuff to save everyone else and you're giving all this money away, like more than you can really afford to, and you're doing all this, stuff to save everyone, and you are like drowning and you're not happy and you're depleted and you're running on fumes, and people just keep trying to take and take more if you don't have those boundaries around things like that and how much you're gifting or giving out or whatever. It's again, it's probably not actually long term helping the world as much as you think. As much as it might suck to hear if that's some way you've been operating and you're like, what, there was no point to that. Well, I'd rather you get set free and realizing the truth around these things and stop those patterns than appease the limiting belief that keeps you in a stuck place, or appease the false reality that keeps you in a stuck place or in a pattern that's not serving you, even if it means you have to question and go through the discomfort of realizing, like, ooh, I spent like 10 years of my life doing this. And yeah, I guess that's true. It wasn't really serving me. And I can see how maybe it didn't do as much for the world as I thought it would. And ooh, this is uncomfortable. I'd rather you go through that if you're willing to, maybe even if you're not willing to, and have a better life for you than the opposite. Okay. So I know the truth can be uncomfortable. Please, when you notice it, receive it anyways. Okay. Otherwise, you're just living a lie and it just probably gets worse over time. Anyways, and it reminds me of something I'd always say about the truth is I'd rather personally know the truth and see the truth and be able to make the optimal moves regarding the truth, whether I see it intuitively or in whatever way it shows up, than to live a lie for 5 years or however many years or however long, and things keep getting worse because I'm making all my choices based off of a lie. And then when the truth does eventually come to light anyways, or I'm forced to see it, then everything is a little bit maybe more likely to either fall apart or just be a lot more destructive because I went all the way over here into La La Land instead of, oh, this thing's coming. We're going to go here and here and here and here and here. And okay, there was a lot of change, but things are a lot better. And now that all that's played out, now that I operated based on the truth and all that destruction is sweeping down and that area I would have gone to, I'm completely good over here, or way better than I would have been at least or something. So that's my philosophy on it, at least in part. And that's something I'm getting I was guided to. So consider what's true for you around that. And if you'd like to operate that way too, whether it's intuitively or some other way. I'm getting to tell you this as well. Like if you work with your intuition and divine guidance and channeling, one intention you can set is just asking to receive the accurate and true information, regardless of what it is, what you would like to see or not, or what you would like to hear or not. Just ask. And it is we're going to be talking about this in a second, funny enough. It's usually healthier to be unattached in that way in the first place and be like, okay, what's true and what's accurate? And like just receive that and be like, okay, now that I know, I'm going to do what I'm divinely guided to do. What I'm getting would be the best move from here. And you're going to have a better life in the long run, at least usually if you're willing to receive that and maneuver towards that when you're doing that. Because again, you're not operating based off of a lie or a mistruth or something that's going to steer you wrong. And then all this destruction hits you. So maybe it'll be healthy for you to be unattached to an outcome in the first place, anyways, when you're looking to get channeled or intuitive information. And that can take not judging things and not projecting on things and not deciding things. For example, if you have this huge judgment around losing a job being bad, automatically, like without any regard for, well, if I lose this job, maybe there's just a better one that the universe is steering me towards, or maybe this job, was gonna it was gonna be way worse if I lost this job in a year than if I do right now, because I have all this other support around me right now that I can lean on now that I lost this job. So I'm gonna be okay. The universe really set things up for me. Like if you're too wrapped up in the story of like, oh, if I lose this job, it means I'm a loser, and it means this, and it means this person might not love me, and I'm gonna lose this friend, and like all that's just like a story or projection, and like, oh, my mom's gonna think this, and you're just not willing to like check in and like get that information, then you're kind of sticking yourself. But if you get the accurate information anyhow, then it's kind of like game on. You're like, okay, maybe I'm getting this job isn't going to be so secure. Okay, I'm going to start applying for jobs right now, or I can just trust that I'll be okay because that's what I'm getting right now. Things like that. So it doesn't mean don't take action on things when you get the intuitive information. It's just kind of an example that's speaking towards what I'm speaking about. And that leads into number 3 here. Is there a 2.5 before we go to number 3 here? Yep. Quick reminder, just make sure you're taking care of yourself and making that a focus. I would put that in one of your like top 5 priorities right now with the way you're navigating life is taking care of you and your world in a benevolent way, in a kind way that's kind to you and potentially kind to others. And kind doesn't mean nice and being a doormat, okay? It's kind of being genuine and authentic and real with people too. That's a whole other story for another time because that could turn into its own conversation. However, I think most of you get it. Okay. Number 3, well, anything else before we move on? Okay. So, an additional message before we go to number 3. They're showing me a bluebird. They're showing me a cardinal. They're showing me this yellow bird as well. So what's up with this here? I, I think those are reminding me of primary colors for some reason. Not sure if that's a sign for anyone. And the primary colors is reminding me of kids intuitively. So where's this going here? One of the messages right now is where's your childlike wonder right now? And like, what are the things that lit you up as a child? And how can you invite being lit up in that same way now? Whether it's with nostalgia or something you enjoyed doing as a kid, or it's a new thing that still gives you that same sense of childlike wonder and excitement, that could be an energy that just helps you have more joy right now. And it's totally possible to be there regardless of what's going on in the world, okay? It's totally possible to thrive and be okay regardless of what's going on in the world. And a story to the contrary is just going to stick you. I'm not promising it's always going to be the case. I'm just saying it's possible and you can get there. Okay. So if you'd like that, what will it take for you to get there, for you to invite that in and have that and receive that? Okay, the message was childlike wonder, that childlike excitement for certain things, for life, maybe even that zest for life could be an important frequency right now. I guess that's it. Okay, let's move on. Usually with the bluebird, that's like the sun tarot card, that means joy. And they're also just kind of saying joy is a key frequency right now, and that's going to be important. So, where can you find joy in these times? Number 3, Buddha. Where can you let go? So, they show me a Buddha. The message is, where can you let go? There's also a side message on this one that we'll get to in a second here. So, where has the universe been showing you you need to let go? Is it a person, a job, a situation, a pattern, something you're really attached to or clinging to? Where have you been clinging tightly to everything or anything? The universe is trying to teach you non attachment to certain things where it will be healthier for you to have non attachment in the long run. And again, our attachments can really be something that sticks us. It doesn't mean it's necessarily the case that the second we're attached to something, it's sticking us and we don't have to freak out about it either. It's just kind of looking at, hey, if we're a little bit looser with things, the way we're holding on to things, what way can things shift where things can get better and new things can come in and we're willing to have anything leave our life if that thing leaving will contribute to our life being greater and for us to having more of what we desire in and as our lives, okay? That's a healthy place to be. When we're like clinging to something at all costs, that's where we can get dragged by life, if you will, is the way they're having it show up to be sad. And it does kind of link back to our message where it's like, well, if we have a bit of non-attachment and we're not super attached to what has to be and we're getting our channeled and intuitive information and it's like, oh, walk away from this job. It's like, okay, in my mind, there are some stories like, oh, will I be safe? Will I be safe? The stuff kind of comes up. And however, if I'm willing to hold it loosely enough to be willing to let it go and see what else is out there, see what the universe is trying to bring me that's better, then you're in a bit more of your power. You're not getting dragged by your attachment to this job. You're willing to have things change so you can have your best life potentially, or a change that you'd like to have. You get it. So the other thing that was kind of a side message here is that this doesn't mean don't care or try to get to a place where like, I don't care about people or the world or anything. It's more like caring is oftentimes part of your makeup. This kind of gets into an interesting energetic component and different way of looking at things that I am going to ask for ease in describing and talking about, though we'll see how this goes. So the non-attachment doesn't mean don't care or don't care for people or don't care for others. It means don't be attached. because attachment and caring are not the same thing ever, is what I heard to write down. And a lot of people do get stuck on this potentially. So if you think about it, and if you kind of get the truth energetically and sit with it energetically, you might sit with, like, oh, I actually really care a lot for a lot of different people. And it doesn't mean you have to be attached to them. It just means that you care for them. Okay. So you could care for someone really dynamically or a lot and also realize, oh, maybe this dynamic right now isn't healthy for us. And even though I care for them, I'm willing to let them go and not be so attached that we can't breathe and find what's best for each of us, you know? So, in the other senses, if you kind of get clear on this, caring for can also actually mean not attaching as much, because if you care for them and you're willing for them to have their best life and you're willing for you to have your best life, you'll be a bit more willing to go with that and allow things to shift so things can be best for both of you. It doesn't mean certain things don't come up if you have to leave a relationship, or a relationship leaves you, if there's grief or there's heartache or whatever. It's like, it's okay if there's grief or there's other things that come up. I'm also just saying it doesn't mean attachment is super healthy all the time, the way certain people go about it. So I hope it kind of makes sense what I'm saying, or at least it starts to, where it's like caring and attachment aren't the same thing. And in fact, the other thing, the bonus message with this one is, if you're trying to prove you care, you're potentially not actually caring. You're trying to prove something, which is not necessarily caring. So, for example, you try to prove how much you care about a job by remaining super attached and maybe even loyal to it beyond what your soul is telling you and what your intuition's telling you, instead of holding the things loosely. Trying to prove is usually a losing battle. So, there's a bonus in addition to this I could talk to. And this one, again, it's if you look at it energetically, you'll get it. If you're looking at it too wrapped up in the mind, you may or may not. It the message, it's something. I watched a video and someone said this and I was like, oh my gosh, I get it. However, it's like, if you're trying to prove that you love someone, it's actually usually because that person can't receive that you love them in the first place. And like, that's why you're trying to prove it. So, if you love someone, I guess a way I could say it is like, you just love them. It's just true. That's just there. And it's usually when they can't receive that you just love them, that you will feel like, oh, I need to do this, and I need to do this, I need to do this to prove that I love them, and da 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 da. It was like, well, they couldn't really receive it in the first place. We're not in the place to yet to receive that. So it's a really interesting conversation, because how much do we try to metaphorically chop off parts of ourselves to prove we love someone or prove we love something, or really do destructive ish kind of things to prove things. So it's not really about what's proving, it's more about what's true. And can you come from that place intuitively and in whatever way works and whatever way is for the highest good, to kind of get out of the game and step out of the human junk game of like proving and being overly attached to an unhealthy degree, which, we could also use the word codependent in some instances of like the overly attached thing. It's like, oh, I need you to breathe. It's like, no, you need air to breathe. Like, you have your lungs, you have air, you can breathe. Like, you don't need someone else to breathe. Like, you just don't. Yeah. Usually when you're getting to the point where you're like, oh, I need this person in my life, that's attachment. That's usually unhealthy. If you're like, oh, I'd really like this person in my life, this person contributes to my life genuinely, and you get that intuitively, this person makes my life more expansive, that's a more healthy connection where you don't have to get rid of yourself to have this person in your life as a relationship. And some of this conversation I'm borrowing from the book Divorceless Relationships. And I know some people aren't super into access consciousness. It is an access consciousness book, and there are good things in that book. So if that calls to you, you can check that out. Okay. Number 4 here. How can you indulge yourself in an appropriate amount that won't tank your world? So indulge is an interesting word. We'll kind of get to a bit more on it. So the universe is really laying it on thick that you need to have self-care. How can you indulge yourself in life in a way you enjoy this week? How can you indulge in abundance and frequencies you enjoy? Is it an hour to yourself, especially if you have kids, probably? Is it a week off coming up that you can book for yourself, or maybe this week? I'm not saying you have to take a week off. It's just something to sit with and see what feels like the best move for you. If you can, if you can take a week off. So, is it giving yourself abundant experiences? And again, they don't have to be expensive. They just have to feel and energetically be abundant too. And they want me to tell you this story about cheese, okay? So, I'll tell you exactly the way they're telling me to tell you it. So I went to Aldi, okay, and there was like this $3 like thing, like little circle of brie cheese. I'm like, oh, okay. And my body was like, I'd like that cheese. And so I'm like, okay, we're buying the cheese. And got home, and my girlfriend and I, we had this brie cheese, and it was so good. And it actually, the experience felt indulgent. It was abundant. It had that energy. Like the cheese was really filling. It was really good. It was at like a $3 thing of cheese. So, but I really had that like energy of like, oh wow, like it feels so abundant. Like I feel, things like that. So it's kind of a bit of an extra message with that. Anything else we need to say on that here? So I guess that's a story. That's one example of maybe a healthy indulgence that's like, wow, I feel abundant. This feels really great. The other thing is that they said here, indulgence could be weirdly a frequency that sets you free. As far as what that means, we'd probably have to sit with that a bit more, but that's what they're saying, funny enough. Anything else on that before we move forward? I'll just read this next bit. Things that make you go, I'm rich. And it's something that, like, energetically, as you sit with it, you're like, oh, I'm rich, are great things to surround yourself with, FYI, especially if you're trying to improve your abundance. Now, you do have to receive the information on that intuitively and not force it mentally and decide something will make you feel rich. So you do have to kind of go with the energy of it and like regarding your intuition. So like the cheese, it's like, okay, I'll buy the cheese. And then I sit with it like, oh wow, as I'm eating this cheese, I feel rich. Or oh, buy this shirt that I'm guided to buy. And as I'm wearing this shirt, it's like, oh wow, I feel rich while I'm wearing this shirt. It could be a $10 t-shirt. It could be an expensive shirt. You have to follow the energy. You got to trust your intuition on it and see what you're guided with all of it. So the thing is, one of the reasons what we're talking about that is that this can unlock some more wealth and abundance for you when you're in that energy of abundance and giving that to yourself. So I'll remind you once again, it doesn't have to be expensive. You don't have to rack up credit card debt. You don't have to go crazy with this. You can start small and start with what you can and see what you can give to yourself. That begins to shift your world energetically as you're intuitively guided with some of this stuff. And again, it's just a suggestion. It's just a frequency that could change some things and a frequency that could potentially change your world if you'll receive it and have it. So they're saying you guys get it. Let's move on. Number 5 here. This one's we'll just get into it. Horse spirit animal showed up for this one pretty strongly. And the message is the track change continues. So we did have a message on channel messages on November about track changes. We'll get to that. So the message is that change rears its head. You have to flow with change this week, big or small. Let it take you. Let it carry you. Let it bring you to where you're meant to go. Horse Spirit Animal is bringing a stampede of change your way this week and beyond, and the change has only just begun. Let the stampede take you to where you're supposed to be and where you are meant to be. So change is just happening. It goes along with the track change message that came through for this month and beyond, where it's like timeline shifts. It's just we're on entirely new tracks for our future. There was a message about new paths coming in, and will you allow it? So I'll give the example of timeline changes once again. And they'd like me to tell you an experience I had with a message that Lee brought through. And so bear with me, okay? So one time, okay, there's more I could tell you too. We'll just do that. Why not? It's Christmas. It's not Christmas, but anyways, I was sitting with this. I was scrolling through YouTube and this video popped up, and I didn't really click on the video. It was just the thumbnail about like timeline shifts. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna set some intentions. So I was like, if timelines change, they only change for the better. If timelines change, they only change for the better. If my timelines change, they only change for the better. If my timeline changes, it only changes for the better. And funny enough, a Lee Harris video I clicked on sometime after that, either the same day or the next day, there was a message about timelines. And when there are timeline changes, sometimes we have like a project or something we're working on and the universe just says, nope, we're not doing that anymore. And it just stops, or we get the message like, nope, we're done with this, shelve that project. And you're just like, because you might have been working on it for a long time, or you might have put a lot of effort into it, or you might really be convinced like this is the way that I will make money and I will solve all my problems and my life will be great and I will attract the love of my life and I must have this thing and it must be in this way. And the universe might be like, nope, none of that. Nope, 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 nope. It's not like you won't have those things that you'd like to get out of that thing. It's just that might not be the way. So if you're like in allowance of that and you're just like, okay, I'm getting to stop doing this, just gonna stop and be okay with that. And let's see what the universe brings in. Usually, really quickly, we have something else that turns up to replace that thing that's a lot better. It's on a higher timeline, it's on a higher trajectory. It could potentially lead us to more wealth and abundance. And one of the examples that showed up for me with this is along that message was I was really working hard on, you might recognize it now as Valleyu Ka, it was Valleyu Me. There's a very particular way I was working on it to teach it and get it out in the world, and I had been working on it for years at that point, and then the universe was like, "Okay, can this?" I'm like, "What?" Like, I've been working on this for a long time, and sure, there were certain things that weren't flowing as much, but the universe was like, "Stop it. We're gonna shelve this for now." I'm like, "Okay," and so I just kind of let go of it. And after a couple of days, they had me really focus more on the source fires modality, which really kind of came to like, oh, this is even more potent than Valiumi was, and it's like way more effective, and people are really loving this, and it's flowing a lot more, and people are way more excited about the next classes, and they'd really like to go through the whole thing with this one, which was really interesting. And I'll tell you, because I had Valleyu, it used to be called Valleyu Me, and then my guides renamed it this year to Valleyu Ka. I'll talk about that more in a second. With Valleyu, I'd get people who'd be like interested in like the first class, and then we go through the first class and be like, okay, I've got the second class, and then like no one would sign up and be like, okay, so I guess this is just not flowing right now. So, but it kind of makes sense in hindsight with where the source fires came in and how that went and how much better that all went. Not that Valleyu was getting bad feedback at all. People liked it and were like, hey, it's potent and stuff. It was just the source fires seemed like people vibed. It just, for whatever reason, that one flowed. Okay. And it's interesting because now with Valleyu Ka, which is what my guides renamed it to, it kind of came back just in a very different realm and way and method. Like, for example, there's the art with Valleyu Ka symbols on it. There are the, I guess, chants, the Valleyu Ka audio loops that are being produced now. Like, I have one that just launched a couple weeks ago for energy clearing and cleaning for the highest good. So you just turn on the audio loop and, you know, it works with the symbols and it just does whatever cleaning and clearing and energetic work is for the highest good, whether it's for a person or a room or whatever. And you can read about that, on either of the websites, valleyuart.com or brandonhbloom.com. It's kind of on both of those places. So the timeline shifted where things really changed. It just opened new doors for the highest good and allowed things to expand and get to a higher place with everything instead of like a forced perspective or it needs to go this way that didn't really seem like it was kind of flowing as much as it could have. And yeah, there's like a divine timing thing to it too. It's just more trusting the universe with when things collapse or don't work out, like what better could be available and what could that be? What could that be leading to that's better than you ever imagined if you'll just turn your head or just be like, okay, show me what's best instead, universe, or something like that. So that's it. I hope this helped, resonated to whatever was for your eyes good. This is much longer than I thought it would be. If you like the length of these, please let me know. I'm just kind of flowing with the messages that come through. I can make these shorter. I could keep these this long, whatever is for the highest good and what's working best for everybody and would lead to the greatest future and best results for everybody. And yeah, you get it. I'm willing to go there with this. So either way, I hope this helped, resonated to whatever was for your highest good. If you'd ever like to go further with my work, I have the monthly membership, the Let's Go Higher membership with channeled, full channel mode sessions, like longer ones, 45 minutes plus, that go out every month. There's a whole slew of channel guided meditations with a new one that comes out every month. It's this library of all this channeled work, including these Q and Channeled A sessions every month where I go live and channel on questions that different members submitted. And there's also other channeled information around that as well that gets hit on. And then there's also channeled messages on the month ahead every month. So it's geared towards the members specifically. And it's an additional channeled reading on the month ahead for the members that just brings through whatever information would be for the highest good for the month ahead. And those are also timeless. So if you need one and it's not anywhere close to a channel messages on the month ahead video, you can go back to a past one you're drawn to or your guides draw you to and watch that and get a reading, for that time period for you as well. And then there's more. The Valleyu Ka audio loops are in there I just added those in. And so those are going to be there for free for free, sort of for members, just as an additional bonus. because they're $7 in the shop each so far, and they'll just be in the membership, as an additional thing that gets added in as a bonus, I guess. And beyond that, you can find more channeled MP3s on brandonhbloom.com/store. There's the Step Out in the World and Shine full channel mode session, Abundance Boost full channel mode session. The Vleyuka audio loops are there too, so you can find all that. And then I also have crystals for sale and that Vleyuka over channeled and intuited art. The Vleyuka symbols, and then there's channeled and intuited art behind them that I facilitate. And those are by prints because I do those digitally. So not with AI. I don't use AI, and I don't really work with AI pretty much. Period. Right now, but I definitely don't work with it for art because that just wouldn't vibe with me with this thing I'm putting out there for sale. That's supposed to be channeled and intuited. It just to me it didn't really seem like the right move. So that's not what I'm doing with that. But that's all on VallejuArtandCrystals.com, and there's more. So BrandonHBloom.com, you can find everything I'm offering, like channel intuitive readings and things like that. Beyond that, I really hope it's a good week for you guys. Please manifest the heck out of heck and stuff this week with the 1111 and piggyback off of those collective energies. And remember, it's never a bad time to manifest if you're feeling called to do it, even if it's on a random Tuesday in middle of the middle of nowhere in a barren astrology desert with no manifestation planets and the crazy aspects of the manifestation thing. Sorry, astrologers might be able to have a more like precise language around the different like planets and alignments that would be congruent with manifestation. However, remember you're an infinite being. You can manifest whatever, wherever, whenever, however, and it'll work. Just don't be afraid to piggyback off of the collective intent either. So I'm going to leave you there. Take care.